And I literally ran into the back of the garden of the house. There was a woman in there with her daughter, and she screamed, because just imagine this big 6'2" guy just ran inside your house. At this point, I should have just given up. I don't know what I thought I was doing, but then they broke in the door. The officer gave me one.
Many people saw, yet no one stood up. An 18-year-old stabbed over and over again. Not a single person would talk, because in Peckham, snitches don't just get stitches, they disappear. Just another day in London's darkest streets. Gangs, murder, blood, revenge. It was a system, a machine that fed on fear, controlled by ghosts in the shadows, and even after 30 years, they never truly left. This is the story of the Peckham Boys, and hey, if you enjoy these deep, dark dives, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. It was the 1990s, and the streets of Peckham in South London were a mess of people, cultures, and problems. It was a place where everyone was trying to survive, but no one really knew how. Amidst this chaos, a group of young kids started to form a name for themselves, later known as the Peckham Boys. They didn't start out as a gang, just a bunch of local youths hanging out, finding ways to make money and maybe feeling like they were part of something bigger. But as the years passed, things changed. The pressures of the streets, the endless rivalries, and the quick lure of cash turned them into something else entirely. Peckham had been a battleground for a long time. The tensions with nearby areas like Lewisham and Brixton go way back, way before the 90s. It started in the 1950s when schoolboys from these areas would fight over turf. Brixton had been hit hard during the Blitz, and after World War II, a lot of wealthy folks left. The area started to change, and soon immigrants from the Caribbean moved in, finding homes in new council estates. Things weren't always pretty. Peckham too was going through its own transformations, especially with the kids from these areas now attending Kingsdale School in Dulwich, a place where the rich kids from nearby private schools looked down on them. The differences between the locals and these wealthy kids sparked fights that only seemed to grow as the years went on. It was a clash of cultures. A lot of kids in Peckham were of African descent, mostly Nigerian, and this cultural gap only deepened the tension between them. By the time the 1970s came around, the streets of Peckham were a whole different scene. The kids who had once fought on the playgrounds were now forming gangs, and some of them, like the Gloucester Grove Boys and the Night Jackals, were becoming legends in their own right. These were real groups, staking claims on territory, building their reputations, and making sure they didn't get pushed around. Fast forward to the 90s, and the Peckham Boys weren't just a bunch of kids anymore. They were an established force. The older generations were being replaced, and the new crop of gangsters was rising up. By the mid-90s, the Peckham Boys had consolidated their power. They were now a whole network. They were the main Peckham Boys gangsters, the guys who ran the show. Beneath them there were the younger Peckham Boys, teens in their late teens eager to prove themselves. And then even younger, there were the tiny Peckham Boys, kids who were barely out of primary school but already learning how to hustle, how to survive. And all of this, just the beginning. But what would become of these boys, who were raised in chaos, fighting for survival on every corner? What made them so powerful? It all goes back to the 2000s, which was a dark chapter in the history of Peckham. The gang had evolved, becoming something much more powerful and terrifying than ever before. The Peckham Boys were divided into different sets, each with its own identity and purpose. You had the Peckham Kids, made up of the youngest pre-teens trying to find their way. Then there were the younger Peckham Boys, the teens who were still figuring out what kind of life they were going to lead. The younger Peckham Boys were in their mid to late teens, while the Peckham Boys set was for those aged 18 to 25. And then of course there were the older, unofficial members, those who had seen it all and done it all.
Fuck. Hey, Gallus, they're gonna take you to hospital, bro. You're gonna be alright, fam, I swear, fam. I'm gonna link you at the hospital, bro. I've got a code, fam. Feds are coming.
But in the middle of all this developing infamy, a tragic and shocking event shook Peckham to its core. On November 27, 2000, two young boys, 13-year-old Ricky Gavin Preddy and his 12-year-old brother Danny Charles Preddy, stabbed 10-year-old Damilola Taylor to death with a broken glass beer bottle during an attempted robbery. It happened on the stairs of a tower block in the North Peckham estate. A child's life taken, and for what? A robbery gone horribly wrong. It was a warning shot. Peckham was becoming a place where violence was the rule. By the mid-2000s, the gang had rebranded again. They were now known by names like Spare Number 1, Peckham Young Gunners, Shoot Instant, Original Peckham Boys, and Don't Fuck Around. And then there were the Crane Block Massive and Yellow Brick Massive sets. So many names and so many faces, but they were all connected to one thing: control of the streets. With new names came new power, and with power came blood. In October 2004, the Peckham Boys and their rivals, the Ghetto Boys, collided in a notorious shootout outside the Urban Music Awards at the Barbican Centre. At least 18 shots were fired in a matter of seconds, and one of those bullets hit a woman named Helen Kelly. The bullet didn't kill her though. No, it was stopped by the underwire of her bra. Some might say she was lucky, others might say fate had other plans. Linton Ambersley, a member of the Ghetto Boys, was sentenced to 12 years in prison for wounding with intent, but the damage was done. A couple of years later, in 2006, things only got worse. On September 17, 2006, a man was shot and stabbed to death on the Woodpecker estate in New Cross by members of the Peckham Boys. They'd mistaken him for a member of the Ghetto Boys. Around 30 Peckham Boys showed up on bicycles, ready to enforce their will. The murder went unsolved, just like the 5 other unsolved murders in the area that same year. But this wasn't the only one. That same night, a man was chased and stabbed in Deptford by a mob of 30 to 40 youths, but he survived. And yet, despite the bloodshed, despite the violence, the Peckham Boys were becoming more influential by the day. In November 2006, Time Out magazine listed them among the top 100 movers and shakers of London. Then came Marlon Granderson, known on the streets as Raver. In 2007, he was caught with a stash of weapons: MAC-10 submachine guns, Makarov handguns, and ammunition, along with thousands of fake ecstasy pills and a load of cocaine. He tried to get out of it by claiming the items belonged to his dead friend, Anthony Williams, but it didn't matter. He was convicted of possession of firearms and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 10 years. The chaos didn't stop there. In 2008, the police raided the homes of suspected Peckham Boys members. They were suspected of being behind over 120 robberies, using everything from knives to guns to crowbars to get what they wanted. The same year in October, the violence reached its peak again, when a stray bullet hit Polish care worker Madga Pniowska during a shootout between the Peckham Boys and the Ghetto Boys. The shootout in New Cross left Magda dead. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And things weren't getting better. In 2009, a 13-year-old boy was stabbed 5 times in Camberwell in a street battle between the Peckham Boys and the organised crime gang. Later that year, in another revenge attack, a member of the gang shot and killed a bystander in Brixton while trying to kill 2 youths from the Peckham Boys. The gang had risen to infamy, but what would it take for them to fall? Could they ever be stopped, or was Peckham destined to remain their playground forever? By 2010-11, the Peckham Boys gang underwent significant changes, with factions splitting and forming new alliances. Crane Block, based in Pelican Estate, and the Letsome G's from Letsome Estate distanced themselves from the older Peckham Boys groups. The latter two merged to form Anti-GMG, a group notorious for its violent reputation. GMG, an acronym for Get Money and Guns, or Guns, Murder and Girls, became a key player in the ongoing gang violence across Peckham. In August 2010, the Metropolitan Police took significant action against Shoot Instant, an offshoot of the Peckham Boys, convicting several members on charges of dealing Class A drugs. This came after a large raid across Southwark, which resulted in the arrests of 80 individuals. The situation turned even more tragic on September 6, 2010, when George Ogaba, also known as Taz, Young Taz G.O., a prominent member of the Peckham Boys, was killed after a car rammed his motorcycle in Peckham. This murder came just hours after another violent event, when Rio McFarlane, a friend of footballer Rio Ferdinand, was killed in a drive-by shooting while visiting a makeshift shrine for Taz. The violence continued throughout the year.
Man's good. Man's on the corner store. Yes, you should know. Come on.
Okay. I'm just trying. I'm not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's 2 shots gonna come through.
Yeah. Yeah. Come. I love shouting.
The same year in December, 17-year-old Sylvester Acapullara was shot dead in Heron House, a tower block in the Pelican Estate. Though initially thought to be linked to Brixton's GAS gang, it was later revealed that the murder was carried out by members of the GMG faction within the Peckham Boys. David Nyamutfakudsa, known as Tiny Nutty, was sentenced to 26 years in prison, and Sodi Kadiojo, known as Jungle, was sentenced to 30 years for their role in the killing. By 2011, the violence escalated even further. In April, a member of the Peckham Boys, Kais and JJ, was jailed for shooting a rival gang member in the arm with a Glock pistol. This rival was allegedly linked to rapper Giggs. The following month, Ola Apena, a member of Shoot Instant, arranged an execution from his prison cell, resulting in the brutal murder of teenager Samuel Ogunro. Apena's actions were meant to prevent Ogunro from becoming a snitch, a common concern within gang culture. February 2012 saw further violence and legal repercussions. 3 members of the Peckham Boys were sentenced to life imprisonment for the murder of 18-year-old Daniel Graham, who was stabbed 24 times in broad daylight in East Dulwich. The murder took place on a busy main road, with witnesses seeing the crime unfold on a passing bus, an image that shocked the local community. The same month, a member of the SN1 faction of the Peckham Boys was sentenced to 8 years for causing over £1 million worth of damage during the 2011 London riots, further contributing to the gang's notoriety. In May 2012, 2 GMG members were sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Sylvester Acapullara and the attempted murder of 2 others. The GMG faction continued to grow in influence, with warnings to the local community against cooperating with the police, making it clear that snitching was not tolerated. The violence did not let up in the following years. In April 2014, a man was sentenced to 35 years for the murder of Rio McFarlane. The victim was an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire between 2 rival factions, PYG and Letson Boys. This incident was another tragic reminder of the innocent lives lost in the ongoing gang conflict. As the 2010s progressed, a new group emerged in Peckham, Zone 2. Although a newer formation, Zone 2 often referenced the older Peckham Boys, linking themselves to the legacy of the original gang and continuing the cycle of violence that had plagued the area for years. Their music, much like their predecessors, became a tool for claiming dominance over Peckham and surrounding areas. The music of these gangs, especially drill, became a powerful form of expression, with lyrics often detailing violent encounters, rivalries, and the struggle for power in the streets. This music also served as a recruitment tool, providing an outlet for young people to express their frustrations, but it also intensified the gang culture, bringing attention to their dangerous lifestyles. In 2019, the film Blue Story, based on the conflict between the Peckham Boys and the Ghetto Boys, depicted the violent world these gangs inhabited. The influence of music on the Peckham Boys cannot be underestimated. In the streets, the ends mentality thrived, where respect is earned through dominance, whether it was flaunting expensive champagne, wearing the best trainers, or possessing the deadliest weapons. Drill became a way for these gangs to showcase their power and gain influence, but it also led to a further glorification of violence, creating a cycle that was hard to break. As the gang scene in Peckham continued to evolve,
Man, he wish he would have stayed and never left him behind. Now every time that he's alive, it's gonna play on his mind. And any time that he's alone, he wipes the tears from his eyes. He's gonna miss his best friend, but he promises he's getting revenge. Man, fuck Switcher, fuck Skitzer, fuck the whole of them ends. But these time Switchers glad he finally got one of them. And when Madder comes back, he'll be waiting on him. It's 1-0 now, but Madder's trying to even the ting. A straight 6 foot deep, he's trying to bury him in. And Madder just can't forget.
the police, particularly Operation Trident, struggled to address the underlying issues fueling gang violence. The growing divide between the police and the youth in the community became evident. Many young people felt that the police were not doing enough to address the root causes of gang violence, such as poverty, lack of opportunity, and social disenfranchisement. Without a significant shift in approach, the violent cycle of gangs like the Peckham Boys seemed destined to persist. The heat is still on. Anyone who goes to the local clubs can feel the cold atmosphere. It's all about who's got the best bottle of champagne, the best trainers, who's pushing the biggest weights, and who's got the flashiest jewelry. jewelry, or who's driving the best car. If you can scoop every title, you're deemed the winner of your area, or ends as it is commonly called. Once you've got your status, you're made in your ends. The more explicit the lyrics in the music, the more likely it is to be aired. This isn't just a London thing, but a nationwide trend, with white and Asian youths rapping their ends too. In fact, many gangs are mixed. What could stop this? Many believe that more black officers need to be involved in Operation Trident. Until then, the youths will pay no attention to what Trident's police have to say. Despite the efforts of law enforcement, the legacy of the Peckham Boys, their music and the gang violence continue to define Peckham's streets. But what do you think? What will it take to break the cycle? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and explore more untold stories from the criminal underworld. Hit subscribe and stay connected. Power never truly fades.